In the opening remarks, our compeer said, this year has been like no other year, which is correct. I used to think back, there are not a single year in the 20th century or the 19th century, I would say, was like this. What we have is not a civil war. We've had civil wars around this region earlier. What we had is not terrorism. What we have is not world war. We've gone through all this. We've gone through uprisings. We've gone through riots. This was just a collapse of the economy. It was an economy waiting to collapse. In the 4.5 years I was Prime Minister, it was an effort to try and take the economy out in a different direction. We were able to get a surplus on the primary budget. But it was warfare. Politicians wanted to protect their power, businessmen wanted to protect their profits, and many others wanted to see what the country would provide for them free of charge, without having rendered any services. So in the long term, this formula can't hold. When Sri Lanka became a commercial economy, a modern commercial economy, after the Colebrook-Cameron reforms and the opening up, the abolition of Rajakarya, the British came in, but not only the British, the Sri Lankans also came. They had no banks, they had no means of finding money, there was no World Bank to give them assistance on a concessionary terms, but what did they do? They built up a big business empire. While the British planted tea, we planted coconut. We exploited our graphite. And then in 1948, after the war was over, we stood second to Japan. But we started destroying it from the 60s and the 70s. We started rebuilding economy which was affected by a war, and thereafter, the way we went is best not described here. So it is not surprising that this economy collapsed in the 2 years of COVID, reduction of revenue, and the policy measures that were taken. So from the turmoil, we have to get out. We are still working our way through. We've been able to stabilize with our own effort. The last few months, from July onwards, from August onwards, we had to do it on our own, of course with the help that the multilaterals gave us. We've got into a staff level agreement with the IMF. I thought Harsha will get up and say, can you table the copy now? We are now discussing with our creditors, bilateral creditors, not the Paris Club, but with India, and we've had very successful talks. And we have started talks with China, and they've asked us to talk with the Exim Bank, and the talks are going on. The talks with China started later because it had to start after the party conference. They wanted it. So we started the talks. Haven't seen a major issue that has come up so far. So we hope we can conclude it fast, but that doesn't mean that we are out of the woods. We start next year with a big hole of about 300 to 400 billion rupees. That's what the CB is going to cost us. We start from there. How do we handle it? If you want the government to fund it, then we'll have to get the printing presses going. I mean, we are paying not only for the increase in price of coal and fuel, but also for bad management. Now, this is the first issue we have. Are we to adjust the prices and face the consequences, or are we to do nothing and hope someone will help us? Now, this is the first question that all of us have to answer. If you have to go ahead, there's only one thing you can do. There are no options. And I presume I'll get blackguarded again for that. Second, we have to look at our banks. We have to save our banks. Easier said than done. I need not talk to you about the position in the bank. You all know it better than me. But it's twofold. One is all of you want to know what's going to happen to the interest rates. I wish I knew. All I know is the governor has told me that the inflation has peaked. It's coming down. You all understandably want some relief with the interest rates to carry business on. I understand that and appreciate the viewpoint. It's not easy to carry business on with such high interest rates. On the other hand, the central bank also has to handle the economy. So maybe sometimes early next year, we will have a meeting of minds of both these propositions. One, strengthening the economy. Secondly, seeing what relief we can give the private sector. But that also means to understand that the bad debt that is being carried by the banks is mainly from the private sector or the government sector. Keep the government sector aside, we are dealing with it. How do you handle it? Look, one of our major areas of concern are the small and medium industries. You can't allow them to collapse, but they are in a bad way. So you've got to find a solution. There, I think, the state and the private sector, the big players, medium players, all have to see how can we save our small and medium enterprises. There are the larger ones too, but these are the ones that can get wiped out. Can we go on without them? The success of the open economy was that a large number of small and medium enterprises came along. People made their way, they came up to the middle class, they went beyond that, some became billionaires, but that's how the system worked. Now what are you going to do with? So these are two major issues that we have to resolve as we go along. What do we do after stabilization? What is the plan for reform? Frankly, I have no plan for reform. I don't know in this crisis the reforms can work. To reform, you must have economy. What do we face in the future? Whatever relief we get from our debtors, multilateral debtors, creditors, and also from the private creditors, we have to pay this money back longer term. Then remember, for the next few years, we have to borrow money. Our trade balance is not in our favor. So are we going to rebuild the same structure and come down again much faster? Therefore, I thought it's not worth reforming it. So I personally have no plans for reform, and the government will not have plans for reforms. We want to build a new economy that will face 2050. Is the private sector ready for it? That's the only question I have to ask you. Are we ready for it? Are we going to take up the challenge? Shall we take the pain that comes with it? Or are we going to hide again? Ostrich cannot put its neck under the carpet all the time. And sometime it has to come out. What have we got first? We have to earn foreign exchange, foreign exchange, foreign exchange. Why can't we have a balance of trade? Why can't it be in a surplus? Can you put into a surplus? If not, we can't survive. If you want to survive, and you have to compete with the world, then we have to be competitive. Not competitive, we've got to be highly competitive. We've got to join the rest of Asia, we've got to compete with China, you've got to compete with Japan, you've got to compete with Korea, you've got to compete with India. Can we build that? Can we create sectors which are competitive? I'm ready to take that challenge. Are we ready to go to 2050, or do you want to go back to 1950? These are the two options that are available for us. Then we've got to build a highly competitive social market economy. But it must benefit all, not only a few. All of us are going through these troubled times. Some are finding it very, very difficult. And are we ready to do those reforms? If you are ready, there are many opportunities. We talk of renewable energy. I won't talk of renewable energy. I will talk of green hydrogen. That's where the potential lies. We seem to be having an immense surplus of renewable energy which can be turned into green hydrogen. Why don't we develop and become a logistics center? When I last tried to develop the Colombo harbour and tried to give out the East Terminal, there's a big debate as to why I am trying to sell the country. Now we have given the West Terminal out, it's very good. But if you really want to get going, you have to give the East Terminal out. We've given the first choice to Japan. If they don't, we'll ask the others to come in. Colombo port must be the busiest port in South Asia. The small port won't do, so when you get full, we are now talking of, we are thinking of expanding the Colombo port all the way to Jala. A logistics center. Already about 30 acres have been cleared in Colombo North, 20 or 30 acres to start one part of it. There will be more land becoming available. Could connect it and look at Hambantota and Trincomalee. You had the three best ports available in the region. Think of logistics, think of green hydrogen, and then modernize the agriculture. Small holding agriculture maybe, modernize the agriculture and get ready for exports. It can be done, but it requires high technology. And more than that, the willingness to go ahead. Land must be used to the maximum benefit of the economy and the people. Now this is where the chamber is one day going to come to me and say, why are you doing this? They have had a contract and they must have the right to use the land. And my answer to that is, you have not used it to the fullest benefit of the economy, so therefore we'll have to give it to someone else. There has to be more changes in the land law, and especially to give land to the smallholders. Otherwise they will not put the money in, they won't put the effort in. So these are some of the changes you have to make. You have to have a highly competitive manufacturing industry, very highly skilled, semi-automated, maybe automated. All they are necessary. So you've got to think out of the box. You have to look at what you can do. To all this we require education. High education, school education. We have to become an educational hub. And I must thank all parties in Parliament who agreed, let's open the higher education sector to a private university, to the private sector and to universities. Let's have that. Now this means, are we ready to think out? There is much more to be done. Are we ready to think out of the box? Are we ready to take the challenge? Are we ready to go forward? And everyone has to think. Private sector has to think. Trade unions, others. So we'll all have to get together, and that's why I call it the social contract. What do we build and how do we all benefit? So this is the challenge that is there. As far as the government is concerned, yes, we have an idea of what the long-term plan should be. We'll put it out for discussion, we'll prepare it, we'll ask all the political parties and the different players in the economy to give their views, but they'll prove, are you ready to go? If you are against it, come up with a viable alternative. That's all that I'm asking. It's not for me, it's for you all. For all the young people who are looking for a better future. Anyone who can go out. They are basically voting with their feet. They are saying, you have not succeeded to all of us, him and me all. Not to the government, to the government and the opposition, and to the Parliament as a whole. Not only the Parliament, for all of you as the establishment. Instead of pointing fingers at each other, the younger people have decided to vote with their feet, and they are getting out in thousands and hundreds of thousands. You may not have any more. So we have to realize that we have to make amends, that we have to go ahead. We may all not be here by 2050, but for those who are there and the younger people, a better future. So our program for the future will be called Next 25 Years. What will we be when we are 100? Thank you.